bring in Yuriy now. He is advisor to the Ukrainian defense minister. He's coming to you via Skype from Kyiv. It's good to have you with us. What do you credit your recent successes on the battlefield to, sir? How did it happen?
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me. Now, indeed, the progress of the Ukrainian army during the last week has been spectacular. And of course, there are many factors which determine this success. One of them is the high professionalism of the Ukrainian army, its high level of motivation and determination of our soldiers, because we are fighting for our land. We are fighting for the future of European freedom. So for us, it's a matter of survival. It's a matter of a just war. So we are very, very determined to win. The second factor, of course, and this is something that we understand and appreciate very much, is the fact that the international community, and in particular the United States of America, is supporting Ukraine militarily with providing Ukraine heavy weaponry. You know it probably better than I do that, since the moment the Ukraine received the HIMARS systems, we were able to conduct very high precision strikes on the Russians' command centers and their logistic and supply lines. And of course, all that made this progress, made this counteroffensive very efficient and very fast. I mean, this counteroffensive actually, as our Minister of Defense, Mr. Alexei Reznikov, said, it exceeded even our own expectations.
Are you worried about Western support dropping off somewhat, given your recent successes, in the sense that the US and the West may feel that there is less need to supply as much aid and weaponry going forward? What's the sense in Kyiv at this point?
Well, we hear the commitment of our international partners on a daily basis that they will stand with Ukraine till the moment that Ukraine wins this aggressive war. And of course, on a daily basis, we are explaining that, look, we need more weapons, actually, not less right now. Because while we had this success in the northeast of Ukraine, in the Kharkiv region, and down south in the Kherson region, every day Ukraine is target of massive missile strikes. Yesterday, today, you've said it in your report earlier that the Russians are targeting civilian infrastructure, they're terrorizing people, they're leaving hundreds of thousands without electricity, without drinking water. So this is the moment, when Ukraine needs more military support rather than less. And we are confident that our partners understand this.
What do you make of Russia casting this as a strategic regrouping? And how concerned are you about calls within Russia for a sort of scorched earth policy going forward?
Russians are trying to somehow disguise their defeat, their setback, their humiliation on the battlefield by coming up with this creative terminology, regrouping, relocation. But in fact, what we see is, this was just a chaotic fleeing of the Russian army. And look, just imagine, right now, as we speak, they're trying to recruit new soldiers in prisons. They are mobilizing essentially murderers from the Russian prisons to go to the battlefield. They're promising them, if they survive the 6-month period, they will be set free. So the Russians are mobilizing prisoners, murderers, to come to Ukraine and kill Ukrainians. I mean, this is just, even in Tolkien's movies, the orcs would not have come up with such a deranged strategy. So, this talk about the regrouping, this is just an attempt to cover up their humiliation and their impotence on the battlefield.
Are you, though, worried that attacks from Russia will become possibly more brutal, behaviour on the ground more brutal? We're already seeing, clear signs of war crimes having been committed. And how concerned are you about sort of indiscriminatory attacks now that the Kremlin is facing these clear losses?
We have been living with the threat of Russia's aggressive, indiscriminate strikes, their war crimes, for the last 7 months. So of course we are worried about this. And for example, their missile strikes, their missile terror, which only demonstrates that Russia is a terrorist state and should be recognized as a state sponsor of terrorism on the international arena by all members of the civilized international community. So of course we are worried about that. And this is why we are asking our international partners to provide Ukraine with more efficient anti-rocket systems and air defense systems, because we need to be able to protect our civilians. Our warriors are doing well on the battlefield, as we all have seen. But it is very difficult to protect our civilians from these terrorists, from these war criminals. So this is why we need urgently, we need air defense systems, we need anti-rocket systems. And we hope that these pleas will be heard by our international partners.
Is the Ukrainian leadership increasingly determined that this will now be a war that is won on the battlefield as opposed to around the peace table? It does certainly seem as if this could be a definitive turning point as far as the military solution is concerned. But there is always that sort of diplomatic off-ramp. Does it exist, to your mind, to the leadership's mind, any longer?
After the atrocities that we have seen earlier in places like Bucha, Irpin, Mariupol, after the nuclear blackmail that the Russians have conducted with the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which is the largest in Europe. Now, we understand that this is indeed a battle that will have to be won on the battlefield. There is no room for any negotiations until the Russians withdraw from Ukrainian territory, until they leave our land. And then we can talk about compensation and about bringing them to justice in international war crime tribunals. But before that happens, before the last remaining soldier is on the Ukrainian soil, I don't think any negotiations are possible. And this is something that has been said many times by the Ukrainian political and military leadership.
The perspective of Yuriy, advisor to Ukraine's Minister of Defense. It's extremely important to have you on. Your analysis and insight so valuable at this point, as we do see a significant retaking of land by Ukrainian forces. Thank you.